Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to another StarCraft 2 video. So what I got for you today is another much recommended match from WCS Valencia that wrapped up a little while ago. This is a game of Protoss versus Protoss, and a lot of you reached out on Twitter in particular mentioning that I should really go ahead and cast this game if I didn't watch it live myself already. And I did not get to watch this game live myself. I mean, the thing is, obviously, whenever there's a StarCraft event, usually it's gonna be like 3, 4, sometimes 5 days long or so, and I just simply do not have the option to watch for like 12 hours a day. So here we go, it's time to jump into it. Spawning here in the top left-hand corner of Acid Plant LE, and playing with the red Protoss probes. He's from Germany, easily one of the strongest Protoss players on the planet. We have none other than ShoWTimE. And his opponent spawning in the bottom right-hand corner of the map. This man right here is a channel favorite and definitely a favorite of StarCraft 2 viewers in general. One of the most successful non-Korean StarCraft 2 players of all time. He's from the United States of America, of course. I am talking about none other than Neeb. So this should be a good one. By the way, whenever there's like a StarCraft event and you know there's a really good game that I may have not watched, go ahead and recommend it to me over at Twitter or Instagram or anything along those lines. So try and keep an eye out on all of those. Usually for the WCS official events, like for example this one, they do release replay packs. Sadly, I get a lot of people recommending me games from, in particular, the Korean tournaments. For example, a lot of the GSL matches. I would love to cast those. But the thing is, the Korean tournaments usually do not release replay packs. Not entirely sure as to why that is, but they just simply, I don't think they ever really have. So, I would love to cast them, but if there are no replays available, obviously, it is a little bit difficult to go ahead and do so. But definitely, keep the suggestions coming. Always looking to cast the best of the best games. And it honestly makes my job a little bit easier as well, right? Oftentimes I end up casting like a dozen games before I actually upload anything to the channel. Anyways, let's have a quick look at the build orders. So far, nothing out of the ordinary here. Both players scouting about, trying to figure out what is going on. It does look like ShoWTimE is planning to go for a relatively quick low ground expansion, but both players have started up right here with a couple of gateways. 2 Stalkers coming out for Neeb versus 1 Stalker and a Sentry on the other side of the map. Does indicate a bit more of a defensive posture here for our player in red for the time being, but already we do now see that Stargate coming up right after that probe was deflected. So nicely done there. And actually on the other side of the map we see the exact same thing happening. It's kind of funny, whenever you look at mirror matchups in StarCraft 2, particularly Zerg versus Zerg and Protoss versus Protoss, you oftentimes can cast the game mostly from just the production tab. I mean, a lot of these games are just simply dead even in the earlier part of the game, although there is a slight deviation here as far as the units go. Now we do see a slightly faster expansion here for ShoWTimE. We'll have to see how much that's done, or how much that's gonna pay off for him. If he loses a Stalker, that might actually be an absolutely massive deal. But so far, with that high ground, once again, ShoWTimE should be able to, keep this base alive and up and running here for the time being. 2 more Stalkers, though, are moving across the map, but already we see that Oracle being chrono boosted out here for Neeb as well. Well, the pylon dice. That's actually rather painful. ShoWTimE is going to hit a minor supply block here. So nice little bit of aggression here from Neeb. That's, I guess, what happens if you go for that really quick Sentry rather than anything else. Once again, obviously, you don't really want to use that in the early game defense just because it's, it's great at just simply casting spells and all that, but Stalkers will be able to pick it off just fine. Now, I did use its energy on scouting right here with an hallucinated Phoenix, and I do think that Neeb's Phoenix there, or Neeb's Oracle rather, did get spotted. Obviously, ShoWTimE would have had to look at that point right on the minimap as well. He must know by the timing, though, that something aggressive might be coming up, and already he's got 2 Phoenixes ready to go. Spot on defense here by ShoWTimE. I don't think he's really going to be, caught with his pants down here whatsoever. Sure, that Phoenix is going to be able to kill that Oracle there, but it only got 2 kills there in total, the Oracle that is. So nice little bit of early game harassment here. Definitely going to have to give the slight advantage right now to ShoWTimE. Using that German efficiency to its utmost potential. Obviously, they're very well known for that. And you can actually kind of see it in their StarCraft 2 play as well. I mean, most of the German players play a very efficient, macro-focused style that they've grinded out in thousands of games just to be very, 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 strong in their early game performance. Neeb, though, already going for that stasis ward right now, has decided that he doesn't really want to send that Oracle across the map, just because he knows what happened to its little brother. sadly did go down there to those Phoenixes. And ShoWTimE now already scouting the map as well, trying to figure out if there's anything hidden here, or maybe if the Oracle is hiding somewhere in a corner. But so far, doesn't look like that is going to be the case. He's scouting pretty much everywhere. We do see a very defensive posture now for Neeb, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's just simply planning on tacking up to maybe, I don't know, maybe Immortals or something along those lines here in just a little bit. We do not see something similar here for ShoWTimE. Only going for a handful of Phoenixes. Obviously, Phoenixes are phenomenal at picking off units. Even with that shield battery there, they can still easily pick up all of those workers in just a matter of seconds, because the DPS of Phoenixes is so high that the shield battery does not have an easy time healing those units back up. But Neeb already showing us with those Stalkers that he is more than ready to defend against this. Double forges, or rather a single forge now. I guess it's 2 forges in total for both players. That does mean that we will be macroing up to what will likely be 3 bases here in just a little bit. Phoenix is trying to get a bit of an angle. There we go. A couple of probes will be killed, but obviously that might go at the cost of one of those Phoenixes as well. Phoenixes, though, they always are quite tanky. I never really assumed Phoenixes to be this tanky, but they definitely can take a bit of a beating. But here you can see 4 probes going down in just a matter of seconds. Really nicely done. A couple of Adepts now actually shading forward here as well. ShoWTimE, though, will be met by a couple of those units here too. But since he does have the Adepts anyway, and since they're not going to be that helpful in engagements, getting another probe or 2 there, definitely not a bad deal whatsoever. Now, both players, though, for the time being, are just simply macroing up. I would expect some of them... Okay, so apparently ShoWTimE is going to add a couple more gateways here before expanding towards a third. I would expect here a third base to come up for both players in just a little bit. Initially, though, we are going to see a couple more gates here coming up. So, obviously, that's relatively defensive, right? Relatively defensive. There's actually 5 gates now being added on by Neeb. So Neeb, oh my god, that's 6 additional gates. That brings the total up to 8. That is a massive indication that he is not planning to go for any kind of, you know, third base shenanigans, that he's planning to put all of his eggs in a basket very soon and to move across the map. Now, ShoWTimE did just take his 3rd Nexus, so a little bit of a build order deviation. Now, apparently, by the way, the Phoenixes that were stuck on the other side of the map did just get mass recalled. Neeb Stalkers did not quite get the memo. They do not know that these Phoenixes left. But regardless, this does mean that ShoWTimE will have to defend here in just a little bit. Well, Neeb might actually still be going for the Nexus here. Very curious why he decided to go for 8 gateways rather than just the regular 6. Normally, you would expect Protoss at this point to go for 6 gateways or so, just because it makes life a little bit more manageable. This might actually be just full-on a fake out as well, right? ShoWTimE is going to be able to scout that one right now. Obviously, Neeb could just simply decide to not use 2 of his gateways, but then he obviously is going to be delaying his own 3rd base for a relatively small cost. But there we go. Small hit squad of Stalkers now actually moving across the map. They're going to be able to get another one of those pylon kills. I think these are the OG Stalkers from earlier. They do have blinks, so they should be able to get on out of there. At the same time, the Phoenixes once again made their way across the map, picking up 10 probes, 11 probe kills here. 12 probes, that's a lot. Phoenixes are so good, guys, seriously. Personally, whenever I play PvP, I've been really liking them, but here we go. Neeb did decide to go for that 3rd Nexus before really committing to this engagement. Obviously, he doesn't have that many Immortals in this army composition, but he does have a phenomenal amount of units just because of the amount of gateways that he produced. A couple of Arcals now coming up here as well. Solid defense so far by ShoWTimE, but he is losing probes here as well. ShoWTimE is indeed pushed back all the way to the very back of his own natural expansion. Now with the Stalkers back at home, though, I do think he's going to be able to hold on here eventually, but Neeb does not want to give up. He blinks forward, snipes one of the Immortals immediately. 2nd Immortal taking a huge amount of damage as well, but it does stay alive. That's actually absolutely massive. ShoWTimE still getting more and more kills on them. Once again, the Stalkers committing with another aggressive blink forward. They will be pushed back here as well, but that's 11 probes here in total. Neeb definitely manages to even up that supply count here and also the amount of workers here available, but ShoWTimE does manage to push back his opposing player. That is very close. I really wonder if Neeb, what if he didn't make the Nexus here and he would have warped in like an additional 4 Zealots? I really do feel like that could have actually been the nail in the coffin. Obviously, in retrospect, StarCraft 2 is an easy game. Right? It's like, oh my god, if only he wouldn't have made that Nexus, which obviously is an integral part of his strategy. It's always kind of curious. Obviously, you know, I guess the safe choice in this case would have been to just simply go for you know, for the Nexus anyway, just because you know your opponent made one. It's a little risky in Protoss versus Protoss to not get there. But I feel like if you had those 4 Zealots, right, that second Immortal likely would have died much faster. And it really would have been a different ballgame entirely. Obviously, though, that would have made it a full-on all-in here for our player from the United States. So making that commitment at a very important match is a difficult one to do. Or a difficult one to make. Phoenixes, though, still being an absolute nuisance. Finally, we do get the feedbacks there, so that does weaken them up just a little bit. But Neeb is now going for a very Archon-heavy style. So, obviously, Archon Zealot is absolutely phenomenal against everything based around Phoenixes in particular. At this point, he must be getting the confirmation as well, though, that there aren't really that many additional Phoenixes being added on. As a matter of fact, obviously, we've seen that ShoWTimE hasn't really been producing any Phoenixes for a while. Instead, he's really now committing to that Archon Immortal Zealot ball. Something that is extremely common in the Protoss versus Protoss matchup, just because it's so very powerful. Usually we do see a transition from there into Disruptors and the like as well. Curious to see if that's going to be the case in this game too, but either way, it looks like we are setting ourselves up for a macro game. So macro PvP is kind of interesting. Usually, Protoss versus Protoss games have this tendency to be over very, very rapidly, just because it only takes one, very minor error to have this game be closed out in the earlier stages of it. But lately, in particular in all of the mirror matchups now in TVT and ZVZ and then also Protoss versus Protoss, we've been seeing a lot more mid to late game strategies come to fruition as well, and it's actually really cool. A lot of undiscovered terrain there. For example, Brute Lord versus Brute Lord battles in ZVZ are exactly what you anticipate them to be. A bunch of Brute Lords throwing Brutelings at each other, and it looks really funny. But it's one of those things that not a lot of players have got that much experience with. Obviously, though, we're not quite at the super late game yet. Just good old Immortals, Archons, and Zealots about to face off against something that looks extremely similar here for Neeb as well. ShoWTimE is making himself up for a big, aggressive push, and this will all come down to positioning. Archons obviously absolutely phenomenal at dealing damage, but all of these units have one thing in common, and that is a ludicrous amount of DPS. Zealots obviously very, very good at picking up whatever. If you would have actually right-clicked on the Nexus there, it probably would have fallen within just a matter of seconds. Beautiful pickup there by ShoWTimE. But I don't think either player really wants to commit to this one right now. I mean, obviously, they both now know that they've got similar unit compositions, and it's very difficult to make that call. Just because the way that Zealots obviously charge at each other, it becomes very difficult to make that decision. Now, ShoWTimE did just confirm that there is no 4th base here taken for his opponent. The same can be said, though, so far here for ShoWTimE himself. There's no 4th Nexus yet. A couple of Dark Templar now actually coming out for Neeb, so he's going to try and make use of that. Sadly for him, this is not Brood War, so he's not going to be able to get that instant kill on all of those workers. There is already a Photon Cannon, though, being produced here, so ShoWTimE definitely all over that at this point in time. Although, I'm pretty sure 3 Dark Templar will be able to pick up that Photon Cannon if he's fast enough. Look at that response time, though. Very, very nicely done here. Observer immediately coming up as well. The Immortal might actually find its death over here, too. And now that ShoWTimE is once again occupied in his own main base, massive warp in, by the way, from Neeb. But he's using this potential time that he created for himself right now to transition towards a 4th base here as well. Couple of Zealots and Dark Templar, though, all of a sudden in your main base, right? Even though ShoWTimE seemed like he was prepared, it's still dealing an awful lot of damage. That's 11 probes in just a matter of seconds. ShoWTimE, by the way, while this is going on, now also transitioning towards his own 4th base, opting to go for his one on the low ground instead. But this is so awkward, right? We sort of have like this concave versus convex situation with melee units, which is not something that you see very often. But this 4th base has now been spotted. Neeb trying to do some damage. At the same time, a Warp Prism has made their way across the map. Mass Recall now being activated here on a lot of those very important units as well to deflect this Warp Prism from dealing critical amounts of damage. Stalkers blinking forward, trying to get that Prism. But it is gonna stay alive for the time being. Well, if it's gonna just simply fly over, I've got a feeling that, well, no, apparently not. There's not really that many Stalkers, actually. Only 3 Stalkers and 4 Stalkers, respectively, here for both of these players. At the same time, though, while these Stalkers and Zealots are occupied, the army in red is moving towards that newly acquired 4th base. And I think this is the clash that we were waiting for. Both players looking to engage here. ShoWTimE getting a minus around now with all of those Zealots coming from the side as well. But with that many Immortals, and then also, of course, those Archons in the mix, I feel like this army will be deflected relatively easily as well. At the same time, though, a massive Zealot warp in close to that 3rd base location of Neeb. A single photon cannon will not be able to cut that. At the same time, the Zealots are going for a bit of a run, but that is so many Immortals for both of these players, and so many Archons in particular as well. Zealots now making their way towards that natural. They will be able to pick up that that photon cannon after the shield battery runs out. We now also see Zealots making their way towards that 3rd mineral line as well. I do think that there is going to be enough for Neeb to deflect this for the time being, but once again, a lot of probes do find their grave right over here. Now, finally, we do see that tech transition. Look at that. Neeb going for the double disruptor. Love this. 5th base being taken, going into the disruptor play. Not quite maxing out just yet, but leaving himself some more wiggle room to add on more and more of those high-tech units. Zealots are nice, but eventually you want to replace them with as many Archons as you possibly can. Disruptors, though, they can turn the tide of battle extremely rapidly. We know at some point that both of these armies are gonna have to fight to the death. Right? It sounds very, very mean like that, but it is true. We know that both of them have been building up this force, and I really love the addition of Disruptors here. They can just soften up that army so much for the rest of this Protoss force to absolutely decimate it. Well, that time that we were waiting for, I think it may very well be arriving. There we go. First Disruptor Ball moving forward, softening up a couple of these Archons. Really not all too critical just yet. Nice micro backward here so far, though, by Neeb. At the same time, while this is going on, he's also counterattacking with 3 Archons and 2 Stalkers and a Zealot. They will be able to pick up that base. Once again, though, so much value out of those disruptor hits, right? And more of them are continuously joining in. Those Phoenixes from earlier now actually being used to pick up those disruptor balls as well. ShoWTimE's army supply, though, is plummeting. Beautiful pushing back here continuously from Neeb. The United States player really getting a lot of value out of those disruptor balls. At some point, though, he's gonna be forced to engage. ShoWTimE's army is looking powerful, but he's extremely Archon heavy. I like the fact that there are so many Immortals still remaining here for Neeb, and he's really softening up that supply so much. Those disruptors getting the value that they were meant to provide, and all of a sudden, right, it looks like ShoWTimE is the one who is forced backwards. Just a handful of those disruptors, right? Really getting rid of a lot of the Immortals or rather a lot of the Zealots, and then also softening up a lot of those Archons and Immortals. It deals a lot of damage, and I guess just simply microing back there, sacrificing a base was the correct call. A single Dark Templar being a bit of a nuisance. It's gonna make its way towards that 4th base here of ShoWTimE. Now, obviously, though, while that's going on, right, ShoWTimE did actually end up killing one of his opposing bases as well. That does mean we once again have a 4-base versus 4-base economy. Dark Templar, though, coming up with the run by. ShoWTimE, though, finding himself a bit of an angle. Does he want to commit? It does look like that's not the case. He is going to move back here for just the time being. Both of these players, though, engaging so nicely, right? It's so hard to make that decision. How many units you want to commit to the run by? Right? It's very tempting to just simply put all of your army together, because Protoss units benefit so much from just simply having them all in one big clump. But once again, oh my god, those disruptor hits providing so much value, while the Phoenixes, though, from earlier, lifting all of them up as well. A couple of probes are going down because of the Dark Templar still going to town on that 4th base of ShoWTimE, but at the same time, right, ShoWTimE's army is absolutely decimating. Massive hit there, though. Once again, showing that ShoWTimE's force is still more than capable of dealing the damage, but that Dark Templar picked up 11 kills. Zeratul would be proud. Is that too soon? Can I say these kind of things yet? It's very much so also a positional game, by the way. While the Warp Prism may very well be sniped here, while the Archon will go down. This does also mean, actually, that ShoWTimE is going to be able to pick up that base. That base is actually absolutely critical. The main and the natural obviously are well mined out at this point. Neeb is going to even be mining out his 4th very soon. He's now forced to retake his 3rd. Not really where you want to go. These Dark Templar, though, still being an absolute nuisance. Once again, though, I love the way that Neeb is playing this one out. Getting so much value out of those disruptor hits. And here we go once again. These Immortals desperately kiting backwards. All of the disruptors are now taken out of the equation. ShoWTimE wants to end this game right here, right now. Even though he does have a lot of those beautiful, beautiful Immortals and a lot of those Archons, I'm not entirely sure if he has enough to close it out, though. Neeb's still getting so much value. He does need to be careful. Neeb definitely at a really solid economy still, but I guess ShoWTimE has been knocked back to only 3 base economy as well. I guess the 3rd is only just now being reacquired for Neeb. Neeb, though, now actually took a massive hit there in his supply count while that game, or while that previous engagement was happening. At some point, right, this is gonna be decided. Both players own very minimal amounts of economy. Neeb barely behind there in the supply count right now. And while he is desperately kiting back, I really do feel like his army supply is plummeting. Still, that is so many Immortals left on the ground. I love that ShoWTimE decided to go back into Phoenixes to lift up all of those really heavy-hitting units. Still, ShoWTimE's army looks like it may very well be coming through. Beautiful War Prism control there as well. Neeb, though, he does still have a lot of those Immortals left over, and the Phoenixes now actually ran out of energy to lift up any of this force. This is such an extremely close battle. I really do like the amount of units that Neeb still has, but the ShoWTimE supply count does not beat around the bush. Somehow, some way, though, right? Neeb did end up getting a pretty decent engagement off of all of that. I think that's mostly due to the fact that a lot of the army supply count of ShoWTimE is caught up in these Phoenixes. Phoenix is still, once again, scrambling for some energy. They will be able to pick up another one of those Immortals. Beautifully done there by by ShoWTimE, rather. While that was going on, by the way, the base once more got picked up, and both players are having a very, very minimal amount of mining right now. ShoWTimE, actually. Ooh, I thought for a second that these stalkers got star senses there. But ShoWTimE is gonna move over towards the right-hand side of the map. I guess he's forced to do some long-distance mining right now. Yeah, he's practically mined out. He really doesn't have a lot of income anymore. The same can be said for Neeb, though. Right? Neeb got very little income. I wonder if you even want to lift up any probes at this point. It's very tempting to just simply go after the workers, but I don't think you want to. I think if you're ShoWTimE, the smart thing to do is just simply save up the energy here on the Phoenixes. They are the ones that can lift up the Immortals and all of the other scary big units, except for Archons, obviously, you know, take them out of the equation. Really love the way that Phoenixes control this matchup, though. Can you actually engage that, you think, if you're the player in red? Kinda feel like he's not in a bad spot. Both players, though, long-distance mining. I think he must recalled them once again there. But long distance mining from all of those bases. Neeb decides to take one here, close to his 4th base, which is now, by the way, running very, very low. Neeb, though, or ShoWTimE, though, he doesn't have enough minerals, right? He's desperately trying to make as much army here as he can. Just squeezed out another one of those Immortals rather than another Nexus. That does mean, though, that he's gonna be committed, right? He has to commit here. Now, this is important. Oh my god. That is very critical. He drops all of the Phoenixes before the mass recall can complete. And ShoWTimE actually picks up 4 of those or so. I think it's 4 or 5 of those Stalkers. Now, since he did not take an expansion, he has to put all of his eggs in one basket and win the game right here, right now. Question is there enough here for Neeb to hold on? Neeb just finished up a new base. He's mining off of a fresh expansion, and here we go. Zealots engaging against all of those Zealots. The Immortals engaging against all of those Archons as well. Neeb's army, though, looks like it's just a little bit bigger. Immortal microed back to the very back of this engagement, too. And I think that Neeb just barely has enough here to hold on. ShoWTimE, though, once again ahead in that supply count. A new Immortal, a fresh Immortal joining in. Obviously, the Phoenixes cannot lift up these Archons. One of the Archons, though, running very, very low. But that's another one of those Immortals going down. Neeb, with a much smaller army supply, does manage to keep that base alive. And that was absolutely critical. ShoWTimE, rather than committing to another base, decides to create another one of those Immortals instead. And I feel like that's now an advantage that Neeb can really drive home. Still, though, his army actually had a bit of a weird angle. ShoWTimE could have committed there, but every single zealot is critical right now. But the longer that this goes on, right, the more mining that Neeb gets. Look at that. All of these probes are mining, but they're all at a very, very long distance. I think he's even pulling the boys right now in a Protoss versus Protoss. 1,500 minerals coming in every minute that goes by right now for Neeb. He's trying to make a big, big army. You gotta be careful though. Cannot lose a single one of those Archons for practically free. Probes fighting probes here at the last possible seconds of this match. I think that this is gonna be it. Neeb's army supply looking much bigger than his opponent, and while the Phoenixes provided so much value, it is Neeb who wins this game. That was awesome. That was really, really good. Sometimes Protoss versus Protoss matches can look very similar to the other ones as well. Just like the other mirror matchups, really, right? Zerglings and Banelings in Zerg versus Zerg, and then obviously a lot of Marines and tanks in TVT. But this, while both players were making very similar units. I really love the fact that ShoWTimE decided to go for the Phoenixes early on, and then once he realized, hey, wait a second, my opponent is going really immortal and then also disruptor heavy, I'm gonna go back into Phoenixes to try and lift all of them up. Whereas, obviously, Neeb just simply committed to a lot of Archon, and then obviously also, you know, just simply more Immortals and more Disruptors. It really just comes down to who can micro what unit composition better, who can deny more mining time. I really feel like the actual stars of the battles, though, even though they didn't really show up in any of the engagements, were actually the Dark Templar. Those Dark Templar from Neeb did so much work, both inside of the main base and then also at the fourth a little while later, right? I feel like if they weren't there, ShoWTimE probably would have been able to crush it. Regardless, I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. Special shout out to the Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for your continued love. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you once again in the next one.